Senator Lynn Ruane.
Today I'd like to welcome the decisions by Facebook and Google this week to place restrictions on online advertising on their platforms in relation to the upcoming referendum on the 8th Amendment, and also to raise the issue of campaign regulations in elections and referenda in Ireland more generally. Concerning reports have emerged over the last number of weeks that Irish voters have been targeted by a range of deeply concerning social media campaigns, mainly in the form of dark advertising paid for by overseas actors, which feature blatant untruths, biased information and misrepresentations about the issue we will be voting on in 2 weeks. And I think what disturbed me most was that a lot of those ads were targeted to come up during kids' YouTube clips on YouTube Kids in the middle of their, cupcake making, and there was youth defence ads coming up in very strange places, which seemed to target kids and families to ask questions of their parents that they shouldn't be forced to ask until their parents feel it appropriate to have those conversations. The move by Facebook and Google is therefore timely and proportionate to the concerns raised, affecting both yes and no campaigns equally, and allow for a level playing field where digital advertising will have an organic and no longer disproportionate reach based on opaque and unaccountable funding sources. I would particularly like to recognise the role played by our colleague Senator Higgins and by the media in uncovering these tactics, particularly the Times Ireland and Channel 4, which had a segment on the issue last night, which I would encourage everyone to watch, as it really highlighted just how underhanded and concerning these techniques are. However, we should not have to rely on media investigations and the actions of private tech companies to safeguard the integrity of our democratic system. We are trying to regulate a 21st century campaign with 20th century campaign law, one that does not incorporate or address in any way the growth of internet and social media as a campaign tool, and is clearly not fit for purpose. The strict regulations that we apply to broadcast and print traditional media must now be replicated in the digital spheres, particularly in the light of what we know to be true about the recent US presidential election and Brexit vote, and the growth and proliferation of fake news. And even apart from digital campaign regulations, I believe we also need to look at the issue of electoral reform more broadly, as the current referendum process has shown up a number of significant drawbacks with the system. We need to look at the creation of a full-time electoral commission, a greater empowerment of the Standards and Public Office Commission, a larger role for the Referendum Commission in terms of fact-checking and responding to the debate, a major update of the registration system to include e-registering and a greater access to postal vote, arrangements for overseas and emigrant voting, and the removal of the cumbersome administrative barriers such as a guarded witnessing for a simple change of address. These are not difficult or controversial ideas, but they would make a significant impact on the workings and operation of our democratic process. Can I ask the Minister of State for Electoral Reform be invited to update the House on his proposals in this area? I would also be happy to look at a legislative reform in the terms of a private member's bill, and would happy for any senators to work with me on that. Just to conclude, I would like to second what the previous two speakers said in relation to the cervical scandal. I wasn't here last week when the statements were being made, but I was one of those women that had to ring that helpline. I have for many years had to have precancerous cells removed. My last smear was the first in 10 years that was clear, and I sat at home wondering, was that one smear that was clear that I celebrated that I was in the all clear was wrong? And I think 200 women are obviously in a much more worse off situation than me, but it did leave me in a situation where I questioned my own health after 10 years of having abnormal cancerous smears. So I would like to second and support anything that is said in this area in terms of accountability. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.